Welcome to your committee. Representative Johnson, I do not see any amendments, so if you'd please present the bill to the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Co-chair members, this bill essentially is dealing with the rising costs of childcare and how we've talked about it many times, how it's getting more and more difficult for families. And what this does is that tries to address it. Now, there's been many conversations about how we get more people into daycare, more centers, more stuff like that. But while that is going on, we still have families that are having issues paying the bills. And this one addresses that. It's going to be about helping some of the affordability and the fact that we have many, many families that could use any help right now to help them with their child care. Included in your packet is a revenue analysis, and then within that revenue analysis, it shows you how many families that could take advantage of this. And so, which was 81,700 returns were done that would, an average, decrease the tax by 639. So what this does is this actually takes off the limits as far as the limits that are in place right now. So they can just deduct that from their income and get those tax refunds. Now, this is applicable to licensed daycares and facilities. So that's where this stuff. So I have a family. I'm going to tell a story right now. Is I have somebody that works for me, and they are nowhere near what you'd consider wealthy or anything like that. They're basic middle income family. They're paying $20,000 for 2 kids going into daycare. And so it's just getting to be more and more challenging for families, and that's just for 2 kids. And you start taking in 3 kids, 4 kids, you can see where that dollar keeps going up, and it becomes more and more challenging. So this is an attempt, an opportunity for us to step up and recognize that and say, hey, we are here to help you out. We recognize it. This is going to be a direct tax refund, apply towards your income, and get that taken care of. And I think that's very important as we recognize that and tell our families, we do hear you. We do understand the challenges you have. We do understand the expenses that are going up. Some of that is because there isn't as many places to put their children. But while we fix that and while we address that, we have to recognize it's a fact, and we have to try and help them out. And so that is basically what this bill is all about. And I would like to sit here for any questions.
Thank you very much for that presentation. Before we get to member questions, we'll go to the audience. We do have one virtual testifier, but before we get to the testifier, is there anyone wish to testify on behalf of or with concerns on the bill, the department? Not this time. Okay, so with that, let's go to the virtual testifier, then we'll go to member questions. Virtual testifier is Anel Velasco, St. Paul resident.
Hi, yes, thanks for having me. Good morning, Chair Davids and members of the committee. My name is Anel Velasco. I'm a St. Paul resident and a mother of 3 kids. I am a working mom, and I am here to testify against HF495. That might seem surprising. As a parent, I understand the desire to offer quick relief from the high cost of childcare. Like our prior speaker was saying, like, it's very expensive, $20,000 for 2 kids. I heard that figure and I went, yeah, and that's at a very low cost childcare. That is not a kind of the numbers that I'm seeing for my 2 kids who are still in childcare. But this bill is not a real solution. It's a small patch around the edges of a system that needs structural reform altogether. Childcare owners are struggling to keep their doors open. Teachers are underpaid and often forced to work second jobs just to get by and make ends meet. And parents are paying more and more for care that they cannot afford to lose. I certainly can't. The system is broken, and while I appreciate this is a step, the system needs to be addressed because it will not fix itself. We cannot solve an infrastructure failure with a line item gesture. Childcare needs to be funded as the public good it provides, not thrown a small bone that disproportionately benefits folks who make more money. This bill reduces the taxable income by the amount paid by parents for childcare, less any amount covered by a childcare assistant, meaning folks who make less money and have assistance provided will also experience less of a benefit from this bill. Additionally, this bill doesn't address childcare providers or teachers at all, going back to trying to get more children into care, trying to open more places for care. We're not addressing that here. So we should build a stronger childcare system, not merely soften the consequences of one that is broken and weak. So I urge you to vote against this bill and to instead address the systematic problem that our childcare industry altogether is fighting and working against. And I will continue to stand with childcare owners, directors, teachers, and fellow parents to demand that the legislators support the whole structure as a public good instead of offering tailored and exclusive bills to say that we've addressed this problem. I welcome any continuing conversation, and please feel free to reach out to me if anyone would like to discuss this further. Thank you so much for your time.
And thank you so much. Does anybody have any questions for the testifier at this time? Okay. Any member questions? Thank you for your testimony. She's gone. Okay. Representative Smith?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Representative Johnson, especially for pinch hitting for another representative. I know that's not always easy. So we agree childcare costs are rising. It's a burden on Minnesota families. Can you help me? As I read the bill, there's no real caps on who would receive this benefit. Can you help me understand why there hasn't been any motions to target? I know in previous committees there was ideas of saying if you're above a certain tier in our income tax that you're not eligible for this, to make sure it's not being used for those who can pay these costs. Maybe just an open-ended question here at the start. Why not target this more as it's currently drafted?
Representative Johnson?
Well, I think if we go back to the revenue analysis, this would help over 81,000 families right now. And so that's a big number that it would go and help right away. I guess we wanted to get this out there and start addressing that, and also to take into consideration, if you have more income, does that mean you have to, because you have a higher income, you should stop having kids so you don't get that deduction? I think it's there to address everybody. We also understand, I think, recognize the higher incomes and stuff like that. This is addressing, and you look at this number, is addressing middle income people. And it really is. So I think that was the purpose of this bill, and not just say, go back and start targeting and start analyzing who shouldn't and who shouldn't get it. Right now, this is something that is going out there so every Minnesotan can take advantage of this. And I think that's the most fair way we can do it.
Representative Smith?
I mean, Representative Johnson, this is not free money. This is $100 million that is not going to go to help those same families through various things like the working family tax credit or child credit. So like, it's not just, money that we can take without thinking of the consequences. And the number you're giving is just the people who have, families who have people in daycare, which of course is a lot of members in our state. My question is why aren't we focusing on those families that are most burdened by the cost of daycare, and those higher income families that are paying that still can get help through some other programs, but not by being able to deduct that from their taxable income when they don't necessarily need that? Maybe I'll focus the question here on like a scenario. Like imagine a very, very wealthy Minnesota family that sends their kids to New England for summer camp for 8 weeks. That's a licensed facility, or even somewhere in state. My reading of the bill is that the cost of that very, I would say, high-income childcare would be able to be deducted under this bill, which I don't think most Minnesotans would be in favor of. I mean, am I reading this bill correctly in that aspect?
Representative Johnson?
Yeah.
Well, if I understand your I'm assuming you're hypothetical out there that there is I guess I'm trying to get back to, this does cover only licensed daycare, which is more restrictive than actually some of the other, when you go to the federal and the other amounts that have out there, the 7,500. This is only for licensed daycare. It doesn't take into account child care expenses and stuff like that. It's only licensed. So if you're going to go with your example of, I don't know, what was your example again? Some place out there? Is that a real place?
A summer camp, I think he said.
Yeah.
Summer
Chair?
camp.
Yeah.
Maybe, let's go to Sean Williams to answer that question.
Chair Davids and members, the bill limits the subtraction to daycare costs, which are amounts paid to a child care center, family child care center, or group family child care center that's licensed under Chapter 142B. So I guess there's nothing specifically that would allow a summer camp to qualify. I guess if that summer camp happened to be also licensed as a child care center, potentially it might, but I think that a typical summer camp that's not probably would not qualify for this subtraction.
I think it seems like a good
Representative
business
Smith.
idea.
Yeah, I could say, I checked with the chair of Children and Families, their DFL chair, Katiza Watian, who confirmed to me that like a lot of these high-end summer camps or daycare centers that are very expensive are licensed to the state, because they have to be, because they're still caring for children. So my point is, I think this is far too expansive for specifically, as one of the testifiers said, higher income families being able to get a tax break that they don't need, while there are other better programs to serve families who are struggling with childcare costs.
Thank you, Representative Smith. Representative Lee.
Thank you, Chair. Representative Smith covered a lot of what I was going to cover, so I'll just sum it up. I mean, this is a very expensive bill, as we can see from the revenue note, and it is not clear how many people this could potentially help, because it is an uncapped program. But I did want to just clarify the point that this is a subtraction. It is not a credit. It is not a refundable credit. And so because it's a subtraction, you know, and we don't have a tax expenditure report, but we know that the standard deduction is already very high, and so even low to middle income families actually will not be able to take advantage of this program. Like the author mentioned, it will be folks who have a high enough tax liability that this subtraction in their taxable income would actually apply. And so I just do want to clarify that for the community, for the committee. But my concern is, again, this is an uncapped program, and so this is just an estimate of like maybe the low end based on Department of Revenue's estimates. But the other piece is for this very expensive program, there is also no pay for. And so want to also underline Representative Smith's point that you know, this is not just free money. If we had $100 million lying around, we would probably be best to use it in investing in the child tax credit and making it even more generous, because that is a credit and that is also a refundable credit. And so if you are a family in Minnesota that you know, is actually in need of cash for childcare, for expenses, for raising your kids like we want you to, that puts money back in your pockets. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Lee. Representative Swedzinski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just I appreciate Mr. Representative Johnson for carrying this bill on behalf of somebody else, the chief author. You know, that was along my, you know, we should really be blind to the fact that, you know, healthcare costs or daycare costs are expensive no matter how much your income is. And whether you're upper income, whether you're a doctor, whether you're a lawyer, whether you're a teacher, whether you're an engineer, whether you're a welder, across the spectrum, health or daycare costs are high. And I think we need to be focused on the realities of allowing people to keep their own money is not a giveaway, right? People being able to write off the costs that they are incurring, right? It's not like these costs don't get incurred. They're writing off costs that they went out, wrote a check, supported a local business that's more than likely based out of someone's home, and would just like to be able to write that off. You know, we have you know, I appreciate the concern. of the cost of this thing. Well, there are many things that we can do to benefit kids that don't cost us a dime. Whether it's the other credits that we potentially could pass, and all we have to do is say we support it and allow businesses to donate. And those dollars would be focused in on helping kids across the spectrum, especially poor kids, go to a school that they would like to go to, that they can't currently afford. Wow, that seems like a pretty cheap one. I said, if we want to maybe change this bill to address the amount of money that you can make in order to qualify, let's do it. But then let's also do other things that allow individuals to make conscious decisions that are poor, that also give them the tools they need to escape to school districts of their own choice.
Thank you. Representative Hollins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think the point has been made, but I feel the need to reiterate because, yes, childcare is expensive for lawyers and for doctors. I am a lawyer, my husband is a lawyer, and we had to pay for childcare. But the difference is our expenses in childcare allowed, it was hard. We had to, pull back on some things. Our vacations weren't quite as long, et cetera. But the difference is we didn't have to quit our jobs and choose between whether or not we were going to work and whether we were going to afford childcare. And that's the reality that we're seeing here, is that people are making choices about their future careers because they can't afford childcare. And using low-income children as an example in this scenario, just, it does not, it's not fair because we know it's not going to benefit them. That this tax break is going to benefit people who are wealthier and who, as per usual, the tax code benefits those who have more money versus those who have less money. And so we're giving yet another giveaway to individuals who could afford, they would have to tighten their belts, but could afford childcare, as opposed to folks who literally cannot and are deciding to quit their jobs and delay their careers, and frankly, keeps folks in the cycle of poverty that doesn't allow them to move forward. And I have to note, because this typically falls on the women in the household, there's a reason why we don't have women who are partners at law firms who continue moving up in their careers to become higher level doctors or managing hospitals. It's because they make the choice to stay home with their children because they cannot afford to do anything else. And so I think it's really important when we're using examples to talk about tax policy that we're doing. We need to look at the people who are going to benefit the most from it and be really honest about that. And the reality is this provision would mostly benefit people who are already wealthier. It would benefit somebody like me and my husband. And that's not what we need to be doing right now.
Thank you. Any other member questions? Representative Johnson, you've done a great job on a bill that's not yours. I've got a couple, I'm going to be kind of busy when we get back from break. Maybe you could help me out.
I'm here to help, always here to help.
Okay, you want to wrap it up?
Yes, thank you for those comments, and a couple things I'd just like to add.
Excuse me, Representative Johnson, I missed when they're,
sorry.
peripheral vision. Chair Gomez.
Thank you. So I appreciate the conversation that's happened about this bill. And, as we've all kind of acknowledged, the cost of childcare is a major issue across our state. But it's not just the cost of childcare. I want to bring us back to our testifier who joined us, who talked about all of the different parts of the system that are not working. And, so there aren't slots for childcare in a lot of parts of the state. There aren't childcare centers. There just aren't places available. The pay for teachers is really low, and so it's very hard for people to make that work. The cost, of course, is an issue for families. But what this particular kind of solution is, we talked about how it's untargeted, it's very expensive. If we looked at the distribution of this, at who the benefits go to, it would, because it's uncapped, and because, as Representative Lee pointed out, it's structured as a subtraction and not, a credit or a refundable credit, that it will disproportionately go to higher income people. And so spending this amount of money in a sort of expansive, expensive, untargeted way that will address one part of one of the many complex interacting failures of this system is to me, this is just a lot of money to be doing something that will make so little impact on the overall issue with. But I think that that the cost of childcare is one of the issues that we all know impacts every corner of our state. And so there is great potential for us to come together and, work more on solutions. So I appreciate this being a part of that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Chair Gomez. If you wrap it up, Representative Johnson.
Thank you. And I'd like to just point out, thank you for all the comments, Mr. Chair and members. It's important to understand what this bill is and what it isn't. We all recognize the child care situation is broken and we need to deal with it. That's something that gets brought up year after year after year. Does that mean we need to ignore the families that are suffering and having to pay that increased price while we try to fix these other issues? No. This is not a bill that is designed to fix the system. It is designed to help families who are struggling. And an example got brought up as far as, if you want to bring it back, say you have a family, a working class family, middle income, and they're trying to decide whether the husband or the wife should stay home or go back to work. And now you look at it, it's like, okay, example here, daycare will cost us $20,000. Maybe that other person is going to be making roughly around $20,000 to $40,000. Well, now you can start saying, well, yeah, but that $20,000 of what you're making can now be applied and deducted to help us out and help out that situation. Actually helps that decision for somebody to decide to go out and start working in the working world. So I think and I know we can get caught up in who it helps, who it doesn't help. It's unfair here, it's unfair there. I don't think we should get caught up in that. We are helping everyday Minnesotans with this bill. We're not looking at, should you or shouldn't you get this. We are helping them. And we're not judging where they're spending their money and the decisions they're making. This is getting money back out to everyday Minnesotans that are hurting while we try to address the child care situation and whatever those solutions are. But we can't continue to go year after year after year trying to solve a problem and have Minnesotans hurting because we can't solve that problem. So thank you, members. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Johnson renews his motion, or was it my motion? I will renew my motion, House File 495, be later for possible inclusion in the omnibus tax bill.